Welcome to the Big D streams. Remember, if you like this stream, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to click the notification button so that you know when the next Big D stream hits. And as ever, if something is on your mind, if something is bubbling up inside of you that you need to express, please express it in the comments. The Big D reads all of the comments, and he's always interested in what is on your mind. Anyway, in this stream tonight, in this boiling hot, muggy Northern English night, we are going to have some fun. Okay, this is what we're going to do tonight. We are going to be, having some fun. The Big D could hear something there. He had his stream connected to his speaker in the living room there, and he didn't realise, and he could hear voices, and he thought someone was telling him to shut up outside, out on the street. So I was getting ready to press pause on this and go out and sort him out. But luckily, the Big D can't punch himself in the face. Not live on telly anyway. Anyway, let's get back to business. So here we are. So topics for tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to have some fun. We're going to start off with fun question number 1, which is the Big D is going to be giving you his greatest Manchester United 11. He's going to give you the tactics, as in the formation, and he's going to give you a tactically astute greatest 11 in the Big D's opinion, okay? And please put your best 11s in the chat. The Big D reads all of the chats, so please, he's always interested in what is on your mind. After that, we're going to be talking about the latest news with Manchester United. We're going to be talking about Mbeumo, Pogba. We're going to be talking about Rashford, Gyökeres, and any other little bits and pieces that might have popped up in the past couple of days with regards to Manchester United. And the Big D is going to be giving his thoughts on those various topics. After that, we're going to be doing fun question number 2, which is the title of this stream, and that is, who was better between Cristiano Ronaldo, the famous CR7, or the original superstar number 7 for Manchester United, George Best? Who was better between those two players? And again, as ever, the Big D wants to know what your thoughts are, so please put it in the chat. And that's basically it. We're going to keep it simple, and as and when, if any questions pop up in the chat, the Big D will pause, he will answer questions, and we'll have a little chat and see how we are going. But first of all, fun question number 1. Who is the Big D's greatest Manchester United 11? Well, you could go two ways on this, really, because Man United's most famous teams either played a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2. Equally, the team under Matt Busby back in the day with Bestlaw and Charlton, it was pretty much a 4-3-3 with Bestlaw and Charlton up front. But you've also got 4-4-2 in 99, and also the 94 team was a 4-4-2 as well. You could even argue the 2008 team played a bit of a 4-4-2. However, that was a very fluid team. That could morph, the 2008 team, from a 4-3-3 to a 4-4-2 to a 3-4-3 as well. So you could pick any one of those, really. But I'm going to go with a 4-4-2. Solid back four. I'm going to start with the goalkeeper. So the greatest goalkeeper in Manchester United's history has to be Peter Schmeichel. Who else could it be? I love David De Gea. He should still be at Manchester United instead of Andre Onana. Unfortunately, no disrespect to Andre Onana. We've talked about him before. He's been well documented in the press and on this channel. But Andre Onana, I'm sorry, he's not as good as David De Gea. And I love David De Gea. And if he stayed at Man United, and if he'd stayed at Man United to the point where we got back to winning ways and we started winning Premier Leagues again and Champions Leagues again, then maybe he could have been the greatest. But unfortunately, he didn't do that. So unfortunately, it's not David De Gea. And it's not Edwin van der Sar either. But he's a close second, to be fair. And he's probably a better technical goalkeeper than Peter Schmeichel. But Peter Schmeichel was just a force of nature. And not only was Peter Schmeichel the greatest goalkeeper in the history of the Premier League, if there's any Scousers watching, don't you dare throw up Alisson, because you're having a laugh, pal. Simple as that. So it's got to be Peter Schmeichel. He was just a force of nature. And not only is he one of the greatest in Premier League history and Man United's history, he is one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. He's in the conversation with Oliver Kahn, with Neuer, Manuel Neuer, with, you name it. He's up there with them. What was the guy called that played for the Soviet Union? Yashin. He was a player. I mean, he's the only goalkeeper to this day that has won the Ballon d'Or. So, I mean, he was pretty good, to be fair. But, I'm sorry, Peter Schmeichel was the man. He saved a penalty from Jurgen Klinsmann and Marco van Basten. He saved a penalty from Dennis Bergkamp as well. And not just in friendlies or just average league games. We're talking about high-profile, big matches like in the Euros and in FA Cup semi-finals, So he was a big game player. He was massive. He had reflexes like a cat. And he had a personality to dominate even Roy Keane. Roy Keane hated him. But that's all right. So, 4-4-2, goalkeeper, Peter Schmeichel. Peter Schmeichel. Back four. Well, greatest right back in the history of the Premier League, Gary Neville. I mean, what other fullback has... Well, I mean, you could argue Dennis Irwin could play at right back, and he could, but he was mainly known as a left back. So we're going to stick with Gary Neville. Gary Neville is the Big D's pick in his greatest Man United 11 at right back. I mean, he's probably the most underrated player in the history of the Premier League, Gary Neville. I mean, the way people talk about Gary Neville at times as a player, as a pundit, that's a different kettle of fish, But as a player, he was class. He could get forward. He had a cross in him. He could assist. Phenomenal in defence. Hard worker. Made the most of his talent. He was a leader. I imagine he was great to have in the dressing room. Yeah, Gary Neville. No question. He doesn't really have any contenders, really, to say that they were better than him. I mean, Paul Parker was good, but Gary Neville was better, So Gary Neville's going at right back. 2 centre-backs. This might be controversial, but I'm not going for Vidic, but I am going for Rio Ferdinand. I think Rio Ferdinand is the greatest English defender of all time. Yeah, that's what I said. Greatest English defender of all time, and arguably the greatest defender of his generation. I think his only rival in terms of who maybe might have been better than him in his generation was maybe Alessandro Nesta, because he was some player as well, and they were similar kind of players. They were both Rolls-Royce kind of elegant footballers, Rio Ferdinand was so good. He used to give strikers half a yard head start to give him a challenge in a match to keep him interested. That's how good he was. And he got to a point where he was so good that if he came off the pitch with dirty shorts because he had to make a slide tackle because he wasn't in the right place or he wasn't able to get in the right place at the right time and he had to make a tackle, then he thought that he didn't do his job correctly. So, I mean, someone as good as that, when he's giving the opposition strikers a chance just to keep himself interested, I mean, that says everything about what kind of player he was. He was just brilliant, and I was so happy when we signed him from Leeds. Rio Ferdinand's going in there. But alongside him, ahead of Vidic, is a player that I think was an interesting combination of both Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic. And he was another man mountain at the back who was... He was actually quicker than what you might remember, and that is Jaap Stam. Big game player, monster. He looked like a serial killer. Phenomenal in the air, phenomenal tackler. Oh, he was just class. And, I mean, he was the most expensive defender in the world when we bought him from PSV Eindhoven. I think we paid 10.5 million. Now, I hadn't heard of him at that time because this was long before the days of sort of the internet and you still had Championship Manager back in the day, fair enough, but you didn't have YouTube and things like that, so you couldn't really keep up to date with all those kinds of wonder kids coming through. So when Jaap Stam signed for Man United for 10.5 million, I hadn't a clue who he was. But we soon got to know him. And interestingly, his first game in the Charity Shield, he was rubbish. Nicholas Anelka absolutely tore him to pieces, but that doesn't matter because he recovered and he ended up winning the treble in his first season with Man United. And it's no mistake that when he fell out with Ferguson and Ferguson sold him, and Ferguson has gone on and admitted this, that he made a mistake here selling Jaap Stam, that it's no mistake that for the 3 seasons Jaap Stam played for Man United, we won the league fairly easily. Certainly in the last 2 seasons anyway, we walked the league. But as soon as he left, we started leaking goals. And then Arsenal won the league the following season because we conceded too many goals. And Ferguson used to always say, an attack wins you games, but a defence wins you titles. And I think Jaap Stam is a good example of that. So I'm going with Rio Ferdinand and Jaap Stam in the central defence partnership for my greatest 11. Left back, we're going with Dennis Irwin. I love Patrice Evra. He's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, brilliant player. He's a close second. But Dennis Irwin was just... He was almost freakishly good. He was 2-footed. He could assist. He could score. Big game player. Phenomenally consistent. And, yeah, I mean, he's probably the greatest left-back in the history of the Premier League. So, and as good as Patrice Evra was... I mean, Patrice Evra was very one-footed and he couldn't score, and I don't think he got that many assists, Patrice Evra. I don't remember him getting a lot of assists, but Dennis Irwin scored goals. And what a set-piece taker as well. He was a great set-piece taker. He scored some phenomenal free kicks, and he scored quite a lot of penalties as well. So we're going with Patrice Evra at left-back. So, just to recap, so of the Big D's greatest Manchester United 11... In goal, we have Peter Schmeichel, and we're playing 4-4-2. Peter Schmeichel in goal. Back 4, Gary Neville. Right back, 2 centre-backs, Rio Ferdinand and Jaap Stam. And also at left back, we are going with Dennis Irwin. Now, just remember, for you guys, you 5 people it says at the moment who are watching, the Big D wants to know what you think, what is on your mind. If there's something bubbling up inside of you, put it in the chat. The Big D wants to know. If you've got any questions, put it in the chat. Or... give me your greatest Man United 11. The Big D wants to know. But remember, always think about the tactics. And the Big D wants a tactically astute greatest 11. So, you know what I mean? You know, you can't have like 4 attacking midfielders in a 4-4-2. You need a holding midfielder. That's what the Big D means. Anyway, on to the Big D's 4 midfielders. So, this is going to be quite controversial. But the Big D is going with right midfield, David Beckham. David Beckham has to be the second most underrated player in the history of the Premier League. Like, people talk about Kevin De Bruyne like he's Zinedine Zidane sometimes, and as good as he is, he ain't that good, you know? And he ain't as good as David Beckham. See, the thing is with Man United, and, you know, I have been guilty of this. Like back in the day when Man United were just winning trophies left, right and centre, you know, you kind of take for granted how good players were back then because they were all good. So because they were all good, it was just the norm, you know. So, like, if you put David Beckham in this Man United team now, you would think he was an absolute world beater. He would stick out like a sore thumb about how good he was. But because he was in a team where everyone was as good as each other, pretty much, it's almost like it's just... you just kind of get used to it, you know. But even then, David Beckham did stand out a bit in that team, as evidence in his Ballon d'Or nominations while he was at Man United. He's had 2 Ballon d'Or nominations, and he should have won 1. He should have at least won 1. And, I mean, just look at his goals and assists. Big game player, incredibly hard worker. He was just class. David Beckham, right midfield. Anyway, 2 central midfielders. It's going to be Captain Fantastic himself, Roy Keane. Greatest captain in the history of the Premier League. Fantastic player. He was probably the best all-round player in Premier League history. I mean, there's a lot of specialists out there. Like Alan Shearer was a specialist goal scorer, for instance. But there was nothing much else that he could do. You know, he didn't get many assists, really. He couldn't tackle or anything like that. But Roy Keane could tackle pretty much as good as most people. He could pass pretty much as good as most people. He was a great leader, super professional, and he had a never say die attitude, and he was a big game player. And he just made everyone around him better. So you don't get much better than Roy Keane, really. So Roy Keane's going in there. Paul Scholes, the Ginger Maestro. I mean, what more can I say about Paul Scholes? What more can anyone say about Paul Scholes? He runs games. He knits everything together. He's got an assist in him. He's got a goal in him as well. Quiet, big game player. What more do you need? But we're going to go controversial now. On the left, we are going with Cristiano Ronaldo. We're going with Cristiano. Cristiano Ronaldo. And we're going with Cristiano over Ryan Giggs. As great as Giggs was, and he was an amazing flying winger. He's got some big goals, big games, big game player. He's got loads of assists. But it's Cristiano. He won a Ballon d'Or at Man United. You know, and we're going to go into Cristiano a little bit later on in this stream. So Cristiano is going to be the Big D's final pick in midfield at left wing. Okay, that's what we're going to do there. So, just to recap, the midfield in a 4-4-2 in the Big D's greatest Man United 11, we've got David Beckham, we've got Scholes, we've got Roy Keane, and we're going to have Roy Keane as captain as well. Actually, no, we're not. We're not having Roy Keane as captain. The captain's going to be up front, and we'll get to up front in a minute. So, Beckham, Keane, Scholes, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And up front, we are going with George Best and Sir Bobby Charlton, who is going to be the captain of the Big D's Man United greatest 11. George Best, again, we're going to go into George Best a little bit in the player comparison between Ronaldo and him, two iconic number 7s for Man United at the end or towards the end of this stream. But just to say, George Best, they used to say that Pele was good, Maradona was better, George was best. And he was. George Best was just unreal. He completed football by the time he was 21. That was it. So, there you go. So, George Best and Sir Bobby Charlton. He was Man United's all-time top goal scorer. He won the World Cup. He won the European Cup. He captained United when we won the European Cup. He survived the Munich air disaster. A phenomenal ambassador for the club. A great man. He was class. Sir Bobby Charlton, absolutely brilliant. You could say Wayne Rooney, and he's up with a shout as well. I love Wayne Rooney. You could also say Eric. You could also say Van Nistelrooy, Dennis Law, Dennis Violet, Tommy Taylor. There's so many great players that Man United have had, so many great goal scorers. But Sir Bobby Charlton and George Best are going up front. So, just to recap, in the first fun question of the greatest United 11 of all time, and remember, put yours in the comments or in the chat. The Big D wants to know what yours are. If you've got any questions, always put it in the chat. The Big D wants to know what you've got to say. Anyway, Peter Schmeichel in a 4-4-2. Peter Schmeichel in goal. Back four, Gary Neville, Jaap Stam, Rio Ferdinand, Dennis Irwin. Midfield 4, David Beckham on the right, Cristiano Ronaldo on the left, Roy Keane and Paul Scholes in the middle of the park, dictating the game. And up front, we've got Sir Bobby Charlton and George Best scoring the goals for that team. What more can you say about that, really? You can have different combinations, and perhaps my team would have been different if I chose a different formation. If I went 4-3-3, it might have been different. I might have had Wayne Rooney up there. Who knows? But that's what I'm going with, the 4-4-2. So that's that. That's fun question number 1. And now we are going to go on to the latest Manchester United news. Yeah, there's a couple of bits and pieces. So Mbeumo. Brentford have just come out and talked about Mbeumo and said that if Man United can't meet their valuation of him, Mbeumo is happy to stay at Brentford. And, well, yeah, okay. I don't think there's anything to worry about with him saying that. It's obviously a negotiation tactic. He's letting everyone know, including Man United, that they're not desperate to sell. So he's still under contract, even though he has made it clear that, he prefers the move to Man United. There doesn't seem to be any shenanigans at the moment. It just seems like a very simple negotiation tactic, saying that, come on, Man United, if you want this player, you've got to meet our evaluation. And I think the last bid that we put in was 62.5 mil, I believe, and I think they want a package of about 65. And it's like, that's only 2.5 million difference, and that's pennies really when we're talking about football transfers in the Premier League these days. So I think Man United will match that. But an interesting thing to note, today is the last day of this year's PSR. So tomorrow the PSR situation resets, so that will have a factor with regards to Manchester United and new transfers, new signings for the coming season. So expect some movement on the Mbeumo transfer in this sort of PSR transfer window, so to speak. So we'll have a little bit more flexibility to get him in over the line and see where we're at on that front. So I reckon potentially what we're on now, it's Monday. I reckon we could have Mbeumo signed, sealed, and delivered, wearing the United shirt by Friday at the latest. That's what I say. There's no point dragging this out. It's only 2.5 million difference. Everything resets tomorrow. The player wants to come. We want him. It'll be a good play for us. So, yeah, I think we'll get him by the end of the week latest. I would even say we'll have him, signed, sealed, and delivered by Wednesday, to be honest. But just to play it safe, come Friday, we'll have a nice little present to celebrate the end of the week with, I think. Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba has just signed with Monaco. He signed a 2-year contract, and he seemed visibly upset when I looked into this, Paul Pogba, and I can understand it. It seems like he's had quite a trying couple of years. Paul Pogba's a strange one. He's been an incredibly talented player, but unfortunately, he hasn't really lived up to that talent. But at the same time, he still has won a lot of trophies, and he's been a good player in the teams that have won those trophies. So obviously, he won the World Cup with France. I mean, he won the World Cup. The World Cup. Brilliant, So he done that. He won everything in Italy with Juventus when they had a good side. He's played in Champions League finals. Fair enough, he hasn't won the Champions League, but he's played in finals. He's won the Europa League with Man United. He's made his money. It just didn't quite work out at Man United, because he should really have been like an absolute colossus for Man United in midfield when we had him, but injuries just plagued it. It seemed like he would coast along in a game for like 4 games. On the 5th game, he'd score a blinder, or he'd play really well, and then he'd coast along for another 4 games, and then he'd get injured for 3 months, So we just couldn't get the level of consistency out of him. And plus, to be fair, United have been in a state of flux for the past 10 years anyway, so it's going to be hard for anyone, really. But nonetheless, I hope it works out for him at Monaco. 2 years, he's 32. A player like him in a league like France, I don't see why he can't, get a good run of games there. If he can stay injury-free, and he's got the technical ability to play on till he's about 38. So hopefully he can play well there, and maybe even get a one more big move. Because there's plenty of players playing until the 34, 35, 36 at the highest level. I mean, look at Lewandowski. How old is he now? 52, and he's still smashing them in at Barcelona. So if he can play it well for Monaco, and then he can have a good World Cup next season for France, who knows? He might get that move to Real Madrid. Yeah, he'll be a bench warmer for Real Madrid, but you never know. He might get that move, or Barcelona, or who knows? He might go into Milan or something like that, and maybe sneak in a Champions League, or go to PSG or something. Who knows? But yeah, I like to see good players do well, and he is a good player. He is talented. Hopefully, this past couple of years has woken him up a little bit, and that when he gets his chance for Monaco, he's gonna get his head down, stick his ass up, and get stuck in to solid hard work, hard graft, and finally realise his peak potential. Because Yeah, that's all. That's all the Big D's got to say about that. Gyökeres. Last I heard about Gyökeres, according to the Mirror, I believe, that bastion of truth in in footballing and general life media. Gyökeres apparently has snubbed Arsenal. So, and apparently he's leaning more towards Manchester United. So, wow, great. I mean, if we get him, I'd be interested to see how he does. I mean, I've made my feelings clear about Gyökeres. It looks like he might have just found his level in Portugal, because he didn't really set the world alight when he was at Coventry in the Championship. Was it the Championship or League One? I'm not sure, but it was in the lower divisions. I don't think he set the world alight there. I mean, he's been brilliant. He's been absolutely astonishing for Sporting Lisbon. But yeah, be interesting to see. I mean, he's worth the punt, to be fair, because if we get Mbeumo, we've got Kuna, so they're Premier League proven, so they're going to bring a lot more goals to Man United, and I think they'll help Rasmus Højlund as well. So if we've got those two players plus Bruno, I'm actually quite relaxed about the attacking situation, to be honest, because Cunha can play up front too, and I'm sure Mbeumo could play up front as well. So anything after those two players is a bonus, really. So if we get Gyökeres and he comes to Man United, yeah, fair enough. Let's see how he does, and I hope he does well. So that's the latest on him. Yeah, Johnny Evans has become the head of loans or something like that. Let the Big D just double check that exact title. You know, there's so many jobs. Man United is so big now that everything is delegated. Every single job has just been delegated to a fine-tooth comb, where even like scrubbing toilets has got a head of department now. And Johnny Evans is now the head of loans. I think it's head of loans or something like that. But this is going to really annoy me until I find out precisely what that title is. Right, so we're going to talk about... Here we go. So Johnny Evans has become Manchester United's head of loans. That's what he was called. The head of loans. The head of loans and pathways. What a weird title that is. Head of loans. Okay, fair enough. See, I find it quite funny in some of these roles, because like if you're a head of a department in a football club, that suggests that you need a certain level of administration expertise, and when you get a footballer that's stepped up to that, I find it a little bit eyebrow raising, because I mean, I could be wrong, I could be showing my ignorance. There could be many very intelligent footballers out there who have got lots of admin experience. They've got their GCSEs and A-levels. And for those people abroad, that haven't got a clue what a GCSE or A-level is, it's your local school education certificates and all of that kind of stuff, like maths, English and all of that, right? So anyway, Johnny Evans, I don't know how bright he is. I'm sure he is very bright. So I don't necessarily have a problem with him stepping into this loans department role, but I just kind of find it funny, because maybe I've got a stereotypical view of footballers, they're athletes, the jocks, all they've had to worry about is kicking a ball and in the back of the net, and a lot of them work very hard, so fair play. So, but I just find it quite funny when a footballer steps up, I wish him well. I hope he does well. God bless him. Johnny Evans, please sort out some loans for some of these young players. Get them some nice experience so they come back and be world beaters for Man United. So yeah, Johnny Evans has stepped up as the head of loans and pathways. Yeah, Darren Fletcher is in talks to be the under-18s boss at Manchester United as well. I quite like that one. I've listened to Darren Fletcher in podcasts before. Check out a Graham Hunter podcast that he did a few years back now. He does seem like a very intelligent and very articulate, grounded man, basically. He knows what he's talking about. He's a football man, and yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how he does for the under-18s, really, if he decides to, well, if he gets that particular role, because, yeah, he's good. And obviously he knows the culture of the club, and he was a really good player at Man United. He was just a shame with his stomach issues. I think it was diverticulitis or something like that, because there was about 18 months when Darren Fletcher was playing for Manchester United where he was world class. He was brilliant. He was running that midfield. for about 18 months, and he was very unlucky not to play in that 2009 Champions League final. And everyone talks about Xavi and Iniesta dominating that match, but I tell you now, if Darren Fletcher was playing in that match, I don't think they'd have dominated it quite as easily, really, because tactically speaking, he would have made a difference in that game. So he's tactically astute, so maybe he can teach some of these young kids a thing or two. So Darren Fletcher, under 18s boss, potentially watch this space. Tyrell Malacia, was struggling to get rid of him. I'm not surprised, really, because he's been another sick note. Man United have been, we seem to have been cursed with players. And I'm not saying it's Malacia's fault, and I'm not even necessarily saying it's any of the other players that I'm about to mention's fault, really, because you don't really hear about Paul Pogba going out drinking or Anthony Martial going out drinking or anything like that. And you don't hear about Malacia doing anything, like untowards. They just seem to be injury prone all the time. And like Luke Shaw as well, they're just constantly injury prone. They're constantly on the treatment table. And so Malacia was considered a prospect at left back, but I think that moment's gone now. I hope he can get it back. I fancy he's probably going to have to go out on loan again. First job on the table for Johnny Evans, really. So we're struggling to get rid of Malacia. Watch this space. We'll see how it goes. Chelsea apparently are after Aston Villa's goalkeeper Martinez, but apparently he wants to come to United. I say Chelsea can have him, really. Martinez wouldn't be my first choice. He's a good player. He would be an upgrade from Onana, but I think there's better out there. I've said on other videos, Diogo Costa is probably a better bet for Manchester United. We probably have to pay 45 million for Martinez. I'd rather pay the 60 million buyout that Diogo Costa, I think, has in his contract. He's Portuguese international. I think he's younger as well. The Portuguese connection. He's better than Martinez on Football Manager. So if Football Manager says he's great, then it's Diogo Costa for me. I know Martinez has won the World Cup, fair enough. And if we got Martinez, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But I think there's better options out there. But that's the news. Just stating the news. Martinez wants to come to Man United, but Chelsea are after him as well. So that's that. And also, Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford, as of today, I believe, is coming back to Manchester United as it stands. Aston Villa have chosen not to exercise the buyout of 40 million. I'm not surprised. He didn't exactly set the world on fire when he was at Aston Villa. He was a solid player at best. Would you spend 40 million on him? Probably not. Will Manchester United get 40 million for him? Not from a competitive side, they won't. If they do, I will eat hay with a donkey. I will. Live on a stream. I will get some hay. I'll find a donkey from somewhere and I will eat that hay if Man United get 40 million for Marcus Rashford. There's no way a team is going to spend 40 million and then pay his wages. It's just not happening. Saudi, that's the only place where he can go where we can get 40 million and he can get his 300, he'd get more than 300 grand a week in Saudi, but no. So he's coming back. Now, he's probably going to go back to United and he's probably going to go into the reserves, right? I can imagine Ruben Amorim is just going to be ruthless with him and say, right, you're in the under-21, stay there, train there, and then we'll see if we can get a move for you. Because he's just going to want to work with his first team, the players that he wants to work with, and he's going to build this side around. So, and he's not going to want any sort of negative attention. He's not going to want a bad smell around the training ground. He's going to want everyone focused on the job at hand, and all of that nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense at all, but all of that kind of thing. I think that's what's going to happen really with Ruben Amorim and Marcus Rashford. But yeah, as it stands, Aston Villa are not exercising that option of 40 million. What I've just read anyway. So we are stuck with Marcus Rashford. Okay. Watch this space. You never know. I fancy the best bet is probably we'll get him sent out on another loan. Maybe he'll go to Barcelona on a loan, and maybe they'll pay his wages, something like that, and maybe 1.5 million for the season. I think it's probably going to have to be that kind of thing for the next 3 years, really. Yeah, unless he goes to Barcelona and miraculously wakes up and bags in 25 goals, and then they decide, go on then, 40 million, we'll do it. Why not? But I can't see that happening. But yeah, I think that's us up to date on Manchester United's news. We've talked about Mbeumo, Pogba, Gyökeres, Johnny Evans, Martinez, Malacia, Darren Fletcher, and yeah, that's that. But yeah, okay, here we are. We are now going to do a fun comparison, and we are going to talk about who was better for Manchester United. Who was better, George Best or Cristiano Ronaldo? Okay. Now this, I just want to preface this by saying, I want your opinions as well. Thoughts in the chat. The Big D reads all of the chat, so the Big D wants to know what is on your mind, what you think. But because the Big D is going to give his opinion, so you might as well give yours. And we're going to talk about, and we're going to get my AI assistant, ChatGPT, up, and we're going to compare these two players. So here we go. And the Big D needs to put his specs on, because the Big D's getting on a little bit and he needs his glasses on. Here we go. Right, where we at? So Cristiano Ronaldo and George Best. Okay. So George Best and Cristiano Ronaldo appearances. So George Best has got over 100 more appearances for Manchester United, and he's scored more goals. So he scored about 30 odd goals more than Cristiano. He's got a lot more assists as well. But they didn't really track assists back in the day. So I think that's an estimate, it says there. Now, the thing is, one thing that you need to remember as well is that obviously these are two different eras, okay? Now, I'm not saying that Cristiano Ronaldo couldn't have played in George Best's era, and I'm certainly not saying that George Best couldn't have played in Cristiano Ronaldo's era. I think great players can play in any era. But you've got to sort of bear in mind the conditions that both of these players were playing in. Now, George Best was playing on some horrific pitches, and he was dribbling past about 18 people at a time. And he was one of the old school street footballers, so he learned his close control out on the streets of Belfast, So it's important to remember that. Whereas Cristiano Ronaldo was a product of the system. He was in youth clubs and all of that, of various teams and whatnot. So yeah, but anyway, so George Best has scored a few more goals, and he's probably got some more assists as well. But just look at the major trophies there. I mean, George Best won 2 league titles. He won the European Cup, and he's won 1 Charity Shield. Whereas Cristiano won 3 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup, 2 League Cups, 1 Champions League, a Club World Cup, and 2 Community Shields. Also, they both won 1 Ballon d'Or each while at Manchester United. George Best won Football Writers Player of the Year. Cristiano won 2 of those as well. And he also won 2 PA for Player of the Year awards. Now, I'm not sure. I don't think the PA for Player of the Year award was around back in George Best's era. I think the only one that was there was the Football Writers. So I'm assuming if the PA for award was there in George Best's era, he'd have won that as well. Yeah, I mean, George Best scored 32 goals in all competitions in his best year, all pun intended, in 67-68 when he won the Ballon d'Or and he won the European Cup and he scored in the final as well. Cristiano scored 42. They both wore the iconic number 7 shirt, and they were both winger forwards as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, on paper, you could probably say that Cristiano Ronaldo was better than George Best. And I've said before that Cristiano Ronaldo is the second best player of all time, behind only Lionel Messi. Okay? Now, the thing is with George Best is George Best was incredibly talented, and the difference between George Best and Cristiano Ronaldo, in my opinion, is George Best was more talented than Cristiano Ronaldo. I think he was more talented by far than Cristiano Ronaldo. I think George Best was as talented, maybe even more talented than Lionel Messi. But why Cristiano Ronaldo, I think, is better than George Best is because his professionalism was better. He was a better athlete. He treated his body like a temple, and he has squeezed, even to this point, every last ounce of professional footballer out of his mind, body and soul to achieve as much as he possibly can. And if he plays in the World Cup next season and wins it with Portugal as a 49-year-old player, however old he is, and he's captain as well, well, I mean, the debate springs up who's better, Messi and Ronaldo again, you know. So, but I think if George Best had Cristiano Ronaldo's ambition and work ethic, I think George Best is the greatest footballer that ever lived, because he did dominate with Manchester United, and he completed football. He completed everything he could possibly do as a player. By the time he was 21, he was never going to win the World Cup, not with Ireland. He played for Northern Ireland, so he was never going to win the World Cup, okay? So you can't really sort of hold that against him, really, but he did everything at club level. Now, Man United went downhill a few seasons after they won the European Cup, so if he'd have gone to AC Milan or Juventus after that, or Barcelona and Real Madrid, he'd have dominated there as well, and he'd have won multiple Serie A's, multiple La Ligas, whatever, probably multiple European Cups as well. Or he could have gone to Bayern Munich or whoever. I mean, he was dominating, the European Cup in the 70s. So we're talking Bayern Munich, Ajax, and Liverpool won a couple as well. So he might have gone to AC Milan or somewhere like that and made the difference and made them dominate, if he'd had that work ethic. But he was incredibly loyal. Unlike Ronaldo, he was incredibly loyal to Manchester United. So he didn't want to hurt Manchester United in any way. He could have gone to anyone. He could have gone to Arsenal. He could have gone to Liverpool. He could have gone to any team he wanted to go to, but he chose not to do that. And, so he was the highest paid footballer in the world as well by the time he was young. So you can imagine, I mean, there's some people that just need to win everything once, and there's some people that just need to keep on winning. So George Best was the former. He just needed to win and prove he was the best once, and he was satisfied. So whereas Cristiano, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He just needs to win, constantly win. It's like an ego-driven thing, win. So, in terms of Man United legend status, I think George Best is higher than Cristiano, in my opinion, in terms of legendary status, because Man United were a stepping stone for Cristiano. Man United were the be-all and end-all for George Best. So, in terms of Man United legend status, George Best is higher for me. In terms of talent, George Best is higher. But in terms of legacy, in terms of, achievements, in terms of all-round ability and professionalism, Cristiano Ronaldo is by far the better footballer than George Best. But anyway, as I say, what do you guys think? The Big D wants to know what is on your mind. If something is bubbling up inside of you, please put it in the comments. The Big D reads all of the comments and the chat. Put it in the chat. But I think that's us done now. We've done everything. If you've got anything to say, get it in the chat now. Otherwise, the Big D has just about finished, and the Big D wants his tea. He's been to the gym. He's been to his fighting training. He's been bullied around by 21-year-olds. But it's all right. The Big D can handle it. He doesn't have a glass jaw, and he's not that sensitive, so he can take it. But yeah, so that's why I say, If you've got anything to say, if you've anything on your mind, put it in the chats. We're going to finish now, but this is going to get posted for you to watch, listen to later on. So if you've got any questions, comments, or concerns, or anything like that, please put it in the comments. And the Big D will see you in the